Hello from Jonathan and me, and welcome to the programme.
Now, first tonight, snow's returned to the region today, forcing yet more school closures and another battle to keep the roads open. And with delays on public transport, many people again decided it was easier to stay at home. Emergency services have also been warning about the wider risks of the weather after pictures have emerged of teenagers apparently playing on frozen lakes. Our correspondent Neil Bradford has this report.
Even by lunchtime, traffic was still finding it hard going near Milton Keynes. The gritters were out, but they appeared to be too little too late for this morning's rush hour. In Leighton Buzzard, residential streets were gridlocked. So too were the main routes out of town. Breakdowns and sheet ice made this the worst possible start to the day. Many just gave up and went home.
In 55 minutes, I hadn't even made it round Leighton Buzzard. Can't get up on the hills, on the Wing Hill up to the roundabout. The whole town is in a gridlock.
Those who had attempted the difficult drive probably wished they hadn't. Public transport was also affected. On the West Coast Main Line, there were trains, but they were few and far between. Bus services were also affected. Even so, there were no takers for this open-top double-decker. On Dunstable Downs, it appeared there was only one way to get around.
They looked a bit bemused in the visitor centre when we went in there and said, has anyone ever skied here before? In that kind of way that the British people are. They just, no one skied.
It's not just motorists who've been struggling to get about. With the Grand Union Canal frozen for days, these narrow boats are going nowhere. The region's freezing canals and rivers are proving popular with those prepared to risk their lives. Willen Lake in Milton Keynes has been frozen for more than a week. These footprints evidence that people have been tempted onto the ice.
Older rather than younger children walking on the lake, which obviously is quite dangerous. As you can see over there's just that little patch where the actual swans and ducks are left with. And it is actually quite thin, I think, as you get out to the centre of it. So it is quite dangerous for them to be walking on it.
She's lucky. It's knee deep.
A number of videos have also been posted on YouTube showing youngsters playing on the ice. The local fire service says they're dicing with death.
Keep off frozen water. Keep your dogs under control, preferably on a lead, and don't put yourself or people that will try to rescue at risk from falling through thin ice.
Rescuers who may already be overstretched in these treacherous conditions.
Well, Neil is at Willen Lake in Milton Keynes, where, as we've seen in his report, people have been seen playing on that frozen ice. Neil, it's extraordinary, isn't it, that people don't actually seem to realise the incredibly obvious dangers one would assume that they're involved in.
Absolutely, and believe it or not, there have even been reports of people on bicycles and mini-motos on the ice here at Willen Lake, seemingly filming themselves for fun, something the emergency services say is plain irresponsible. Now, although the ice may look tempting, it's not clear what is underneath and how thick that ice is, and that's a problem, of course. As the temperatures warm, the ice will begin to thaw, and although it may look like it is capable of holding your weight, it probably won't be.
Neil, thank you. Now, of course, concern for elderly people who can't afford to pay their heating bills because of this cold weather has been growing after the death of an elderly couple in Northamptonshire earlier on this week.
Yes, the bodies of Derek and Jean Randall were found in freezing condition at their home in Northampton. But today, a local millionaire said he's willing to make sure others wouldn't suffer in the cold. Claire McGlasson has this report.
She turned the heating on?
I don't even know if she turned it on. Maybe she just turned on one.
This lady here has...
Matt Stockdale, millionaire and self-styled Good Samaritan, has promised to cover the cost of 10 of the most vulnerable people's energy bills this winter. All he's got to do is find them first.
I'm sure anyone would think it's a wonderful thing to do, to give the money away, but why invite TV crews to follow you? Why not do it quietly?
Because I want to prick the conscience of other people who perhaps are very, very wealthy. I've got a bee in my bonnet about the cost of energy, and I'm conscious about families who are sat there with blankets wrapped around them in front of a single bar fire, not able to pay their energy bills.
There's a reason he's started his search in Kingsthorpe, Northampton.
Last week, police broke into this house after a nurse became concerned about the welfare of the elderly couple who lived here. Officers discovered the bodies of Derek and Jean Randall in freezing and squalid conditions.
Neighbours hadn't seen them for 5 days. Derek's niece has welcomed news that Northamptonshire County Council has launched an investigation.
You don't think it happens nowadays, do you? You don't think. And I always think if that nurse hadn't have gone that day, how much they could still be lying there now.
In Essex, great-grandmother Marina Palmer now has heating, but she knows all too well what it is to do without. Her boiler broke down during the recent cold spell, and it took 3 days for it to be fixed by the Chelmer Housing Partnership.
It was just like a nightmare to me. I thought, what's happening, you know what I mean? And I thought, well, I've given them all the information. They know I'm disabled, they know I'm old age pension. That should have been enough for them. That should have been some action done to it.
A new boiler has now been installed, and in a statement the Chelmer Housing Partnership said they are sorry Mrs Palmer feels unhappy and acknowledge their communications could have been better. Back in Kingsthorpe, neighbours Doris and Shirley have been spending their days together to share heating costs. But today, a not-so-secret benefactor told them to turn up their thermostats.
Somebody out of heaven has come down, let's put it that way. I've never known anybody to give things away.
It may well be a publicity stunt, but it certainly left them with a warm glow. Claire McGlasson, Anglia News, Northampton.
One bit of good news there for some of the elderly at this time of the year. Now a jury has heard how a man and his girlfriend murdered their landlord after hatching a plan to take over his flat and empty his bank account. They then dismembered his body and scattered his body parts across Leicestershire and Hertfordshire.
38-year-old Stephen Marshall and his former girlfriend Sarah Bush, who's 21, are currently on trial at St Albans Crown Court for the murder of Geoffrey Howe. They've both pleaded not guilty. Matthew Hudson reports.
A van carrying defendants Stephen Marshall and Sarah Bush arriving at St Albans Crown Court. The 38-year-old man and his 21-year-old former girlfriend are accused of murdering kitchen salesman Geoffrey Howe at his flat. The Crown says that after stabbing him, they dismembered his body before dumping it around Hertfordshire and Leicestershire.
The prosecution case is that it was greed that motivated this murder. The prosecution claims that the couple decided to murder Mr. Howe so that they could live in his flat rent-free, sell off his possessions and spend his savings. At the same time, it's alleged they told anyone who asked that Mr. Howe had simply packed his things and moved away.
In reality, Mr. Howe is believed to have died on March the 9th at the hands of people he had given a temporary home to. A major police operation was launched as body parts began to be found around Hertfordshire. A left leg wrapped in plastic was found at Cottered on March the 22nd. A week later, a left forearm was discovered at Wheat Hampstead. On April the 7th, a right leg was found near Puckeridge, while a green suitcase containing a torso turned up at Collier's End on April the 11th. Mr. Howe's head had already been found in Leicestershire. The remains were identified as those of Mr. Howe, and the defendants were arrested on April the 21st.
Sarah Bush denies murder, 2 charges of perverting the course of justice and 1 charge of obstructing a coroner. Marshall denies murder but admits the other 3 charges. This case is expected to last for several weeks. Matthew Hudson, Anglia News at St Albans Crown Court.
Right, it's just gone